My name is Pete Paisley. I'm VP of Business Development for MagStor. I've been in the tape business for way too long, and I'm really excited to have these attendees on this panel today. David, you want to introduce yourself next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. I'm David Fox from Archiware. I'm on the sales and marketing and sort of evangelism side for the product. So you may have seen me on YouTube videos and trade shows, perhaps, and webinars like this one. So yeah, I'm coming into contact with customers who need archive and backup in media entertainment space all the time, and I'm happy to be here.
Great, thanks, David. And we have a couple representatives from QNAP. Dhaval, would you like to go first?
Sure. Hi, my name is Dhaval. I'm the product manager with QNAP. I've been with the company since 2014. I started as tech support, so I have some tech support background, and then moved into product management, and also do product marketing as well. So I handle all the product requests, feature requests, all of that information, and also I join webinars and sales calls and all of that as well. And thank you for inviting us, and hopefully you have a great webinar.
Yes, thank you, Dhaval. And Bob Zelin, known by some in the industry. Introduce yourself, Bob.
Hi, I'm Bob Zelin. I see Jason up on the screen. I'm Bob Zelin, and I'm a systems integrator and a video engineer, and I've been doing this for a very, very long time. I'm the original Avitech in New York City. I got involved with QNAP in 2015 when Apple announced that they were going to be dropping their server product line, and I became very heavily involved with QNAP, and it was an amazing product compared to other products that were 10 times the price. And I've been installing QNAP shared storage systems for professional video editors ever since that time. I've installed over 2,000 QNAP systems, and I'm very, very well versed in making sure that professional video editors that are using, whether it's Avid Media Composer, Adobe Premiere, DaVinci Resolve, or Apple Final Cut Pro, can have, you know, full res 4K to 8K video editing happening with QNAP systems. And I'm happy to answer all of your questions. And we're going to be talking about not only shared storage, but backup and archiving of the data that you have on these QNAP systems.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. And we have a special guest, Jason Lyons, post 67.
Yeah.
Or 67 post. I'm sorry if I got it backward, Jason.
Oh,
Please
it's all
introduce
good.
yourself.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Jason Lyons. I'm a Nashville, Tennessee-based creative and finishing editor. My company is 67 Post, and I've been in the post-production space for over 20 years. We'll just call it that. There's more in there somewhere. We actually use QNAP storage in-house and a 24 tape library and Archiware P5 to manage all of our backups and archives. And I'm passionate about media management and help consult with clients to help tame their large media libraries using products like QNAP, MagStor, Archiware, Iconic, which is a powerful web-based MAM by Backlight. And happy to share my experience with all these great products with you.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate you being here. And a couple things before we jump in. We have a poll going. It looks like some of you have jumped in to put in your anonymous responses so far. So if you haven't already, just click on the polls and quizzes button and give us your answers to some of those questions there. It'll help us understand how to tailor our products and discussions a little more closely to your needs. Also, we are very much interested in taking your questions. We'll probably address most of them after the main presentation, but if one of the panelists gets motivated, they might type in a response in the Q&A, or if you raise your hand directly. But otherwise, let's save them till the end, and we'll have a Q&A session, and we will review the poll responses at the end as well, because I think you all want to see what the answers are. So let's jump in here. I'm going to share the presentation. So data protection best practices on QNAP storage. How to implement data protection strategies on QNAP shared storage devices at the lowest possible cost per terabyte. Plus, creative ways to preserve files and media for the long term as it relates to P5 archives and MagStor. These are some of the common challenges to data protection practices today. We all know and have probably heard about the 3-2-1 principle: 3 copies of data, 2 different types of media, keep one off-site, and there's some extensions to that we'll talk about as it progresses. But it's hard for us in this busy environment today, or due to cost reasons, to always implement that in even its basic form. So we want to talk a little bit about data security, disaster recovery, and data preservation, and the planning and effort that should be dedicated to that. Data recovery options are often overlooked as well, such as documentation, encryption, access control, disaster recovery. So we'll try to talk about some of those points as well. And network infrastructure sometimes doesn't support optimal client and storage access. But we're also going to be talking about some different examples of QNAP configurations, MagStor configurations with Archiware software, cost per terabyte, and the overall costs of some of these example bundles, just to give some of you an idea who might not have already bought QNAP or tape backup or archive equipment, what some of these costs are and how to affect or impact that bottom line cost per terabyte of storage for primary or backup copies of data. So to start, Bob Zelin from QNAP is going to talk a little bit about the QNAP company and product line. Bob, all yours.
Hi, everybody. All right. Well, again, when people wind up getting involved with shared storage, nobody ever wants to buy shared storage. Nobody wants to buy anything. They want to keep their costs down to the absolute minimum. So typical editors will wind up buying individual drives, and if they're successful within a very short period of time, they'll wind up with stacks of drives from G-Tech or Promise or Western Digital, and they'll say, oh my God, this is getting out of control. I need to be able to have one place to consolidate all this data. And especially if somebody has more than one person who they're working with, they quickly realize that it becomes ridiculous that they need to be able to buy, create 2 sets of drives so that 2 editors or more than 2 editors can have the same data. So the ability to have network attached storage allows you to have one system which multiple people can now share. And that doesn't make a difference whether it's 2 people or 20 people, that they want to be able to have one system that everybody can wind up sharing the same data and be able to play back the media at the same time. So typically when people get started doing this, they buy the smallest possible system, and that system with a QNAP would either be a 6-bay or an 8-bay, and in 2024, that product would be the QNAP TVS H674, which is a 6-bay, or a QNAP TVS H874. And I'm mentioning these particular products because these are the least expensive ways for somebody to get started who's doing professional video editing, and they want to be able to have shared storage that multiple people can wind up working with. So in this particular system that you're looking at right now, this is the TVS H874. You would add 2 internal M.2 NVMe drives to be running the QUTS operating system, which is the ZFS operating system. Then you would add 8 matching 7200 RPM SATA drives, and now you would have a working system. We put a 10 gig card inside one of the PCIe slots in the back of this, and this could now go to individual computers or a 10 gig switch so that multiple people could plug in and everybody could be sharing the same media. But what people wind up realizing very, very quickly is that they run out of room because today's video files are enormous. As people started working in 4K and 6K and 8K, and now 12K exists, and they keep talking about even bigger and bigger file formats, the file sizes are becoming enormous. And people say, well, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I've got so much storage, and I bought these large hard drives, and I'm still out of room. What do I do? So you can wind up now buying another expansion chassis, or you can wind up buying a second system in order to have more storage, but this becomes very expensive. In addition to that, you wind up saying, well, I've got a RAID protected system, and RAID which allows for a drive to fail without losing your data. RAID is not backup. So if you wind up having something happen to the main system, you lose all of your data. So people say, well, I'm going to go out and buy a second NAS system so that I can use that as a backup. But at a certain point, it becomes ridiculous. You're spending all of this money. You keep pouring money into the drives. You keep pouring money into the redundant NAS systems. And you're saying there's got to be a better way of doing this. So you wind up saying, well, how can we get this stuff off-site? Now, you certainly can put a second QNAP system off-site, which I do all the time, and use software programs in order to back up from point A to point B. But what you quickly realize is this process is a very, very slow process. The internet, at least in North America, is very, very slow, and you cannot transfer terabytes of data over the internet. So you say, well, how are we going to do this? If I keep everything in my facility, you wind up then risking, if there's a fire or theft or vandalism, then you're going to wind up losing your data. So this is the reason why LTO has become so important. You want to say, well, we need to get some sort of tape backup system so when I make that backup, I can take these tapes off-site. So in addition to this entry-level system, the TVS H874, the next system, which I can show you, and when we go to the next slide, is the TVS H1288X. This system is about a year older than the TVS H874, but this system comes complete. So you're not adding a 10 gig card. You don't have to open the box in order to put the M.2 NVMe drives in. You can just pop two little 500 gig SSD drives right in the front. That runs your operating system. You've got your 8 drives. You can put an expansion card in here. You can put the 10 gig card already comes with it, so you don't have to spend the money on the 10 gig card. And now, of course, you can add a SAS expansion card, so you can plug an LTO directly into this. And on the back of this unit, there are PCIe expansion slots, so you can wind up putting in the mini SAS card, which would wind up going to the LTO drive, so you can do your tape backups. But again, you could use 2 different identical NASs to go from system number 1 to system number 2. But if you wanted to get the stuff off-site, because it's just too slow to be able to transfer 20 terabytes of data to system number 2 over the internet, the best way of doing that is to put in the mini SAS expansion card, and then wind up putting an LTO system on there, popping in a tape, doing your backup, taking in the drive out, and taking that off-site. Now you've got an air-gapped, very, very safe solution. Now, if you wanted a system bigger than this, we can go now to a rack-mounted system, and this is just one of many of QNAP's enterprise systems where you can add an enormous amount of expanders. There are multiple PCIe slots on the back of this. This system comes native with 10 gig Ethernet. You could actually add a 25 gig card in here for even faster access to your systems. And you, once again, you could have a second system, which would wind up becoming your redundant backup system. But no matter how much money you spend, no matter how, what your budget is, you're always at the mercy of the internet if you're going to keep a second system off-site. So the ideal solution is when people talk about the 3-2-1 backup. If you were to say, well, I've got my main system, I've got my secondary NAS system, which is my backup system, but now I've got to get this stuff off-site. Well, how do I get this stuff off-site? I've got, 50 terabytes of data. How do I do that? You wind up putting a mini SAS expansion card from QNAP into one of these PCIe slots. You plug in a MagStor LTO. You run Archiware software, you make your backup, and you take those tapes off-site. So when catastrophe happens, you have all of your data, because your insurance company will cover you for any sort of equipment losses, but they're not going to get your data back for you. So it's very, very important to be able to make sure that your data is safe. What you're seeing in this particular image is that we can wind up putting expander cards into these larger systems, so you could have multiple expander chassis. But once again, you now have more capacity on your main system. That is not a backup. That is just additional storage. You still need to put a PCIe card into the main QNAP, plug an LTO in there in order to be able to make archive or backups copies so that you can get these things off-site so that your data is safe. And what you're seeing over here is a systems diagram of multiple computers plugging into 10 gig Ethernet switches. And in this particular image, you're seeing the QNAP on the right-hand side plugged into this 10 gig switch, and the particular MagStor that's being shown in this image is not plugged in through a mini SAS. It's plugged in through 10 gig Ethernet. There's a wonderful iSCSI solution from MagStor now, where you can just simply plug that into the 10 gig switch. It's on the same network, and now you can back up over the network instead of having to worry about a short mini SAS cable. You can do it over 10 gig Ethernet in order to back up to a MagStor LTO tape backup system. And I think that's about it.
Yeah, Bob, maybe, or you or Dhaval, there are some backup options baked into the QNAP solution for your NAS to NAS backup, and that can be used to support LTO as well. Do you want to talk about hybrid backup sync briefly?
Yes, Dhaval, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, so we have our own application that you can install on the QNAP NAS, on your QNAP NAS. We call it hybrid backup sync, and you can do scheduled backups or sync as well to either a cloud service or another QNAP NAS that has an LTO attached to it. So you can also do remote backups as well, or to an external hard drive that you have connected to the QNAP device. With this, you can do daily backups. You can do, we soon going to be introducing a feature where it will do like an offline type backup where we can achieve a 322 or 32110 backup options. And you can also schedule your content checking or checksum checking as well for your backup, so you don't have to restore to ensure that there's no corruption in your backup as well. And it'll give you a daily report or hourly report depending on how much you like how critical is your data. And then you can confirm that all your backups are fine as well. And you can schedule this backup every hourly, daily, weekly. You have a lot of different options as well. And you can, and then on file system level, you have snapshots as well, where you can do a snapshot of your data. And then you can also do real-time backup as well, where it'll do, if you have another QNAP NAS, you can do a real-time copy to the second QNAP as well. So we have multiple options for the customers.
And also a bit about your different file system choices, etc. Dhaval.
Sure. This year actually QNAP is celebrating its 20th year anniversary. So we started this when we introduced our first NAS. It came with the QTS operating system, which was based on ext4 file system, and which we still continue to support that. But since we introduced, I think last 5 to 6 years, we introduced this new operating system. It's based on ZFS operating system. It's more for enterprise customers or small business or anything above small business, where you have more options for backups, like sync options, as well as it can handle large data. So you can actually expand up to 5 petabyte of storage capacity in a single NAS or with expansions connected to it. With the QTS operating system, you're still limited to 308 terabyte or 250 terabytes of volume capacity. But it does not require that higher RAM. So all of our home NAS is like a 1 bay, 2 bay, 3 bay, 4 bay NAS comes with the QTS operating system, but once you start with business applications, our larger NASs comes with default with QTS Hero operating system, since it supports large RAM capacity, because Hero with CFS, we all know that it requires more RAM, since it uses the RAM as caching mechanism as well. So, and that's what we recommend as well.
Thanks, Dhaval. And just to point out that Archiware is an option that can run directly on the QNAP box. There are some other configurations MagStor and Archiware supports where it can run on a backup server on your network or a client. But we want to introduce David Fox from Archiware again, so he can talk a little bit about Archiware as a backup and archive solution with tape.
Thank you, Pete. Okay, so Archiware is a software product made in Germany, and breaks down into 3 separate modules. Just speaking about running directly on QNAP, so we have a lot of operating system support. We're in the QNAP store, also in store for some other NAS devices. We have Windows, Mac, Linux, FreeBSD installers too, so you can pretty much run us anywhere in your storage infrastructure so that we have full coverage. P5 backup, P5 archive, these are the two modules which can write to tape, but they write to tape for different reasons, right? So P5 backup, that's a disaster recovery product. That's there to get you out of jail if you have a failure or a theft or something terrible happens. P5 backup's got all your data stored away so you can repopulate storage with it. And obviously there's various different ways of doing backups. You may have heard of the 3-2-1 backup rule. This is the rule that says that everybody should have 3 copies of their data, including the actual live production storage. So that's the 3. 2 different media types. So if you've got disk, then you should also have tape or cloud or maybe optical storage if you're into that kind of stuff. And the 1 says that at least one of those copies of your data should be off-site. So it should be in another physical location. So if you had a flood or something like that happening, then you don't have all your eggs in a single building. So that's the 3-2-1 backup strategy. So P5 backup will do backups. P5 archive is interesting for media and entertainment broadcast people because P5 archive, instead of copying your data so you can survive a failure, P5 archive is about moving or migrating data offline or to cold storage, as we sometimes call it, which basically means shifting completed projects somewhere where the storage is cheaper, has greater longevity, and means that you've got more space where you need it on that production storage. So we have an archive product. And then on the right, we've got P5 Synchronize. This is going to be able to replicate your data between all of those different platforms that I just mentioned in a structured, scheduled way. We can keep snapshots, previous versions, all that good stuff. So Pete, next slide, please. And we'll just look a little bit more about what is this backup and this archive and why are they both needed. So I kind of already said this, the backup is DR, disaster recovery. It's going to copy all of your data every day so that you've got something that you can recover from. Everybody needs at least 2 backups. You shouldn't rely on one, ideally. Archive, different kettle of fish, as we say in the UK. Data is moved to the archive. So you're going to go browsing or put stuff in a hot folder or use a MAM to select completed project work. Our work is often defined around a project which has a beginning and an end. When we're beyond the end, does that need to be residing on your QNAP production storage, or would it be better suited to put it somewhere long-term in case you need it? You don't know if you will, so you keep it forever. So the archive is going to run as needed against data that you select. Pretty much all broadcast and media companies, we Archiware find, need an archive. And the extra super benefit of an archive is that you've got less to back up. So if you're struggling to back up all of your storage because you've got 2.5, 3-year-old projects on there that you delivered, then you need to archive that stuff. Keep that archive in a couple of different geographical locations to make sure it's secure, and delete it from the production storage, get the space back, and maybe you don't want to need to spend so much money on disks, but obviously we want you to spend lots of money on disks as well. So next slide, please. So entry level, what this might look like is a single host with archiving to LTO via a SAS cable. So we've got a QNAP and we've got what we call a standalone or a tabletop MagStor drive there. That's going to be an LTO 8 or an LTO 9. LTO 9 is an 18 terabyte tape cartridge. And that's uncompressed. So you'll get 18 terabytes on a tape. And with the P5 desktop LTO edition, that's Archiware's entry-level license. It gives you both the backup and the archive module. So we say double duty there because you can use the single tape device for maintaining both a daily backup and an archive. And the storage capacity is limited only by the number of tapes that you want to buy. So every time you spend $90 on a tape, you get another 18 terabytes of storage to add to your archive or to add to your backup. Approximate pricing there. Pete may be able to correct me. So here we've got a slightly larger solution where rather than using a tabletop drive, we've gone up to an 8-slot single drive rack mount MagStor unit. So this has got 8 tapes in, and it can put any one of those 8 tapes at the drive, so you have some degree of automation. We have a license that supports this called the Archive Edition. That license actually will support up to 2 drives and 25 slots, so a larger library than this. Again, it does backup and archive. And again, the storage capacity is limited only by the number of tapes. You can have 8 online, and then you can have as many tapes on the shelf as you purchased. And on to the next one. So once you've got lots of tapes on the shelf, because you've been archiving for a year and you've now got 20 18 terabyte tapes that you've been archiving completed work to, or even in progress work, but you just want to snapshot the state of projects, then the brilliant thing about Archiware P5 is that we have this simple media asset management, or MAM interface, that allows you to browse and search through all of the assets, all the folders that you've archived up to this point in time. You can find stuff, you can see thumbnails, you can play back proxies that you create of media footage, so you can be sure when you're trying to find a project, you can see it, you know you found the right one. And then from there, you can elect to recover a folder or folders back to disk, and P5 will manage this process. It will tell you which tapes you need to put in the drive. In the case of a tape library, it will automate and the tapes will be put into the drive for you. We will span data from one tape to the next where you've got large files. So everything is taken care of. All you need to do is use this web interface, search, browse, see stuff, restore stuff, and everything happens automatically for you. Next slide, Pete. So a new feature that we introduced about 12 months ago is the ability for us to present your LTO library and tapes via an S3 interface. So then software running as an S3 client, so basically other backup, archive, media asset management type software that can write to S3 cloud storage, can now write to your tape hardware and your on-prem infrastructure. So anything that can archive and backup, or generally write objects to cloud storage like Amazon's Deep Archive Glacier storage, you can now point that at your own infrastructure with P5 Archive fronting that and putting an S3 server in front of it, so that your entire tape collection looks like a bucket. So you've got a bucket, you put stuff in the bucket, it goes onto tape, you request stuff out of the bucket, and it's a restore process. This also means that an organization with maybe more than one office can have a central tape library, a central archive facility, and have that access from multiple sites. So that's one thing I just wanted to talk about. And finally, P5 has a number of integrations with third-party media asset management products, a lot of which are very popular in media and entertainment. So products like CatDV, Cantimo Portal, they all have plugins which allow them to talk to us, P5 Archive, plus your LTO hardware. So you can click in within Cantimo Portal, for example, on a project, so you want to archive it, and off it goes to LTO tape. So this whole process is managed from the interface that you're already familiar with. And you'll find a load of other P5 integration products on Archiware's website under their solutions page. So with that, I'm going to hand you back to Pete.
Thanks, David. And I wanted to, we had a question and I kind of hit the wrong button, so let's address it now. Is there a labeling system for standalone LTO drive users? And David, maybe you'd like to take that one.
Yeah, I'll take that. So yeah, there is. You if you've got 5 tapes and you create a pool called Archive 2024, you say you want to label tapes into that pool. You put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tapes into the drive, one after the other, as P5 tells you to put the next one in, and then you'll have 5 tapes labeled in that pool, and you'll have 5 times 18 terabytes, which is 90 terabytes of capacity in that storage pool. The question might come from the fact that if you're using a tape library, you'll generally use barcodes to identify the tapes. So with a barcoded system, in a tape library, you're labeling tapes, and we're storing the barcodes. With a manual system, with a standalone drive, you'll label the tapes just the same. We'll give you an ID within the software to write on a sticker on the tape, or you can give us your own name input that into the software and put that on the tape, and then we'll ask you for the tape by name. So hopefully that answers your question, anonymous attendee.
Thank you, David. And we thought it would be particularly helpful to have a kind of a real world testimonial. That's why Jason Lyons has been kind enough to join us from 67 Post. Jason, you've used Archiware quite a bit, correct? P5?
Correct.
With
Yeah,
tape and QNAP. So maybe you could share some of your most
sure.
important insights on that experience.
Sure, it's been a fun journey, kind of getting here. But like in post production, we're used to dealing with big, heavy files, right? And to properly back those up and manage archives pose some real questions for us. And so, do we get another NAS like Bob was mentioning to mirror the first one? Of course, that consumes a lot of energy. Do we go to the cloud, which has advantages but also disadvantages? Like it's safe and it's secure, but it's costly and it takes a while to get your backups down if you need them. So for us, when I was researching a solution for shared storage and LTO management, I kept running across Bob Zelin and David Fox's name and in the forums and YouTube videos, and you really can't go anywhere in the shared storage forums without seeing Bob's matter-of-fact explanations of how to get the best storage experience from a QNAP. So I finally called Bob and we worked together to select the right QNAP. He gave some good guidance on what hard drives to get. So we hired him to help set it up for us. And it's been a solid workhorse over the past few years. And then when it came time to figure out what are we doing to manage all these LTO instances, all these tapes and stuff. So I was introduced to Archiware P5 by Richie Murray at Bridge Digital here in Nashville. And as I looked at Archiware further, I kept coming across David Fox's Archiware P5 masterclass on YouTube. So I highly recommend you checking out that series if you're interested in Archiware P5, because there's a lot of great info there. You'll understand how it works and the thought process behind setting up pools and volumes and stuff. It's really, really great. So once we got the QNAP up and running, then we connected our LTO 8 directly to the QNAP, and it's a LTO 8 24 tape library. And we connected that via SAS, and it's of course managed right there on the QNAP with Archiware P5 running natively. So for our purposes, our backups, we have an Archiware backup plan that runs against all of the active projects, and it runs every night. And so any new data generated that day, it picks it up. And so we know that we have a nice, safe backup in case of, again, disasters, anything happening or ransomware or anything happening to that unit. It's safely stored away on an LTO tape, so we can always get back to where we were. It's kind of like having Apple's time machine for large data sets. So for our archives, early on, I've bought so many RAIDs in my career that there's a time where I'm like, I want to get in front of this somehow. I wanted to kind of draw a line in the sand and get in front of this. And the way I approached it was to purchase a large data, something to put a bunch of stuff on, and then get in front of that by being able to offload the stuff to LTO. And that's served me well so far. And so what we do for those instances is with archives, we use P5 to just archive off our media from the QNAP to 2 sets of tapes. We choose to go, one set goes to Archiware's native P5 format. The second set goes to LTFS, which is more of an open standard. And so now we have 2 sets of archive tape. And now we can free up space on the QNAP for the next project, knowing we can always restore it. Just like clients will call you up and ask for, or let's say you're trying to find something that you need to work on. Well, you can always pull it back in, and it's safe and it just works. So we've had a really good experience with that. It's great to have like a single pane of glass to manage backups and archives to LTO. And instead of having handwritten labels and manually keeping a spreadsheet, for example, of what's stored where, the Archiware P5 index is slick. You can simply go to the Restore tab, search index, find the media like David was showing, and verify, hey, this has been archived. This hasn't. You can compare against your storage. And then you can easily set up a directory or a single file for restore. It just takes all the guesswork out of where your data is stored. It's really slick. So I guess to wrap up, if you're a media-based company and you have several terabytes a month growth rate, which is more and more happening these days, it's just kind of the standard now. These bigger cameras shooting more and more, going from a lossy codec to, say, a raw codec can easily go 10 times larger in file size. So, I mean, think about the implications of now every time you hit record on a camera, you think about, well, how many hard drives, how many LTOs is, we have to somehow figure that out. It used to be way different when film cost a lot of money. You're very protective about when you hit that go button. But reality TV and many other spaces, it's the Wild West, it's vacuum cam. So to wrap up again, if you really want to handle your media needs, you need to get ahead of the situation. And this combination of QNAP and MagStor and Archiware is a great way to take charge of your data management.
Thank you, Jason.
Yep.
Thank you very much. We have some questions that I'm going to push out just a little bit, and there's three kind of questions that tie together. So we'll get to those in a minute. And if you have more questions, let's get them in the Q&A, please, and we'll deal with them shortly here. But we want to talk a little bit about MagStor tape hardware, of course. MagStor makes tape backup qualified and tested to work with QNAP and Archiware P5. And the two primary modes, as Bob mentioned earlier, are SAS direct attached to your QNAP storage. We can also have SAS direct attached to a backup server that's on the same network as the QNAP storage in a 10 or 25 gig environment. And we also have our ePro 10 gig Ethernet attached versions of all our products. We have tabletop drives, we have rack mount iterations, and we have, of course, our tape library configurations. So our story today is around cost-effective storage, because as Bob probably said outright earlier, we're all cheap. We want to get the best bang for the buck we can. QNAP's a fantastic solution for the money, and but we need to keep 3 copies of our data. We all know that's the right thing to do, and we strive to do it. But what's the smartest way to do that for the lowest cost per terabyte? Well, you'll notice in the slides earlier, on the QNAP slides, we did share a cost per terabyte. But here's that same TVSH 874, and if you add a MagStor LTO 8 desktop drive to that, we can back up 72 terabytes of storage, but our cost is 36% less per terabyte than the hard drive storage. And that's because, yes, the cost of the tape drive is a little higher up front, but the cost of media is so low. And the fantastic thing is you can keep a second copy, as we've talked about earlier, of those tapes for offsite use, and you can rotate those to keep them updated. And then your tape drive is doing double duty. Then, as David mentioned, you can archive some of this material to tape on additional cartridges to free up space on your main shared storage. So 120 terabytes of backup storage using MagStor LTO 9 in this particular example is 28% less. Now, moving up to some larger configurations, 250 terabytes would be 44% less. And just to give you a feel for it, 144 terabytes would be 14 LTO 9 tapes. So you might keep 14 on-site and 14 off-site. And as Jason mentioned, though, once you start to get up to this size, you might go, well, I kind of want to automate it. Doing it manually is okay. Now, again, when you first get your tape backup, you're going to probably do a larger backup, and that can take some time. But the daily backups using Archiware P5 are just incremental. So they're going to go rather quickly. But the next step as you get into a larger data store might be a tape library. Now, we jumped up to 1,000 terabyte or 1 petabyte configuration here. using the TSH 1677 from QNAP, 1080 terabytes under RAID 6. Now you can move up to a fully automated tape library backup that sits on your Ethernet network, which in of itself provides some pretty significant advantages in terms of performance and growth capabilities. But this 1,000 terabytes of MagStor ePro connected storage is still 35% less as a hardware cost per terabyte. And the tape automation with Archiware P5 makes managing this tape storage quite easy, as mentioned before. And this would be 56 LTO9 cartridges. Now, you might ask, how do I get those off-site and bring them back? Well, there's 20 slot removable magazines on this particular library. So you might pick up some extra magazines to manage those extra extra tape media cartridges. Now, here's the bottom line on tape versus disc. And we've got a great relationship with QNAP, and we're glad they're open to this, but you know, there's different ways to craft a solution for everybody. And sometimes multiple copies of data on disk first makes the most sense for different users. But the issue with disk is the total cost of ownership is much higher due to the energy use is one issue. Roughly the energy use over 3 years of ownership of a spinning disk system can equal the cost of the hardware to begin with. It makes it much more expensive. So when you factor in the total cost of ownership over 3 years, MagStor ePro 10G LTO9 library with 40 slots that I showed in the prior slide is 69% less total cost of ownership over 3 years than the QNAP we had made it up to it in that configuration with the petabyte of storage. It's 154% less expensive than S3 Glacier Deep Archive, and Backblaze is even more expensive. That's more of an all-you-can-eat model. Tape is definitely the lowest cost per terabyte by a significant margin, particularly when you factor in I can use it a couple times, 3 times over for multiple copies, and the cost of ownership, because you don't keep it energized all the time. Spinning disk systems are running 24/7. Tape systems only run when they're doing their backups or restores.
Can I just butt in there, Pete? And
Of
just
course,
add another
David.
thing, which occurs to me while we're looking at the comparison of disk and tape, and that's just to say that tapes last longer than disks. So if you're looking to archive to somewhere so that you can keep this project that you've just completed that you might need in 15 years, God forbid, then tapes last a lot longer than hard drives. Hard drives are complex little machines of bearings and lots of moving parts, whereas an LTO tape, just a reel of tape in a plastic box. So if you
30-year lifespan on tape.
Yeah, if you keep it in a non-humid environment, look after it,
Please.
keep it in its box, which is what everybody does, then these things are going to still work many years down the line. Yeah, I think that's also worth mentioning, particularly as an archive medium.
And Bob mentioned it, but I just want to reiterate, it's air-gapped storage. Once you take it offline as a backup or an archive, and particularly once you take it off-site, it is the most secure form of storage as well, because it's air-gapped, it's immune to cyber attacks, et cetera, et cetera.
One thing,
right.
if I can add,
Sure, Bob.
can I add something in?
Yeah.
There's a wonderful thing as people are listening to this and they're saying, "Oh, these guys are crazy." It's like they want me to just spend more money on LTO tape. They want me to spend more money on a second NAS system from QNAP. I'm just going to go to the cloud. All you have to do is just do a Google search on Backblaze B2 pricing, and Backblaze themselves has a comparison chart of what the cost is per year for Backblaze B2 versus Amazon S3 versus Microsoft Azure versus Google Cloud, having nothing to do with any of these products that we're talking about today, just as far as how much it costs. And people will quickly see that in order to be able to back up 100 terabytes of data on any of these cloud services, whether it's Backblaze or Amazon or Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud, It's dramatically more money than anything we're talking about here today. So when people get all excited and say, I'm going to go out and I don't want to spend this money. I'm just going to do it on the cloud. The cloud costs more money. That's the bottom line.
And we're trying to convince people with Archiware P5 and our hardware, build your own cloud. You're going to get the best of both
you're
worlds.
effectively you're outsourcing your disk purchases or your tape purchases to a third party, and when you outsource stuff, it doesn't get cheaper because they've just got to do it for you. The other thing about archiving to the cloud is that if you archive 50 terabytes to the cloud, then you've got to pay for that 12 times a year. 50 terabytes every month they charge you for it, and then if you add more each month, then each month it goes up. So you're beholden to that monthly charge. Or you've got to download all the data and do something else. So,
and I rushed through my slide. Oh, sorry, David. And I wanted to point out one other thing. MagStor is here to work with you too. If you start with one of our LTO 8 desktop drives, or you have some older tape hardware, we offer competitive trade-in programs and upgrade programs for all our tape hardware too. So we're here to work with you as your data storage needs grow. Start with a desktop device, LTO 8, move up to a library. We'll reutilize that drive for you in the library or take it as a trade-in, et cetera, et cetera. So we got some great questions that have come in, and I really want to dig into those. But first, let's take a minute to look at the webinar results. Now, you can all probably see the answers on the poll results, I think, like I can. But here's what we got in our morning session today from Europe. Half the people said they keep 3 total copies. Fantastic. So we're preaching to the choir, which is good news here. Some people only keep 2 total copies, and some people are doing even better with 22% are keeping 2 copies, with 1 always offsite. And the jokesters in the crowd said, copy that, good buddy. All right. How much shared storage do you manage today? Just so you know how you're kind of there with your peers. Kind of equally split between 1 to 50 terabytes, 51 to 150, 151 to 250. But we all
I've lost Pete. Is that the same for everybody else?
storage needs are growing annually.
Hey,
So
Pete, we lost you there for a second.
oh
yeah.
Am I back now?
Yeah, you're back now.
You're back.
Yeah,
we didn't miss much.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, I don't say anything important anyway. How would you estimate primary storage needs? You can see here, they're growing at a pretty good clip, 10 to 15%. Most people answered 5 to 10, which in of itself, year over year, it's just like inflation. It adds up. So you got to plan ahead, like Jason was saying. And some of you at 1 to 5%, and some of you answered faster than the national debt. Thank you. And some of you have experienced data loss. It does happen, but a lot of you said no. So that's great. It's because you're keeping those 3 copies like we talked about. You were able to get it back. All right. So let's first start with these questions. The panelists can see it, and I think I'm going to point this to David, but I have a folder structure with content from various dates. I want to potentially utilize LTO to just back up current year content. How feasible is that? Does it keep the folder structure intact, but only have newer content? Is that a poor direction? David, what do you think?
Yeah, the answer is yes. You can do incremental archiving. So you can stick us at the top of this folder structure where you've got lots and lots of folders with different pieces of work in. And you can archive that to tape, and we'll save it all to tape. Brilliant. And then the next day, maybe somebody made a change in one of those project folders. So you can archive it again, but incrementally. And the effect of that will be that we'll create another snapshot in the index, and we'll track the changes. So I think that's what you're asking. It keeps the folder structure intact. Newer content will get added in. If you want to go back in time, like Time Machine, like Jason was mentioning, and see what was there a month ago, you can also do that. There's 2 follow-ons, so I'll take those at the same time from the same person. Can you restore certain files, or do you have to restore the entire tape? No. So earlier on, I showed you a screenshot of like a grid and doing a search and so on. So you can go into that interface you can find a folder that you want to restore, put that in the basket, find a couple more, put those in the basket, and then run that restore. If that means we've got to load 3 different tapes to do the restore, then we'll either tell you which tapes we need if you're interacting with a standalone drive, or if you've got a library and the tapes are in the library, then it'll just all be automated. So yeah, that one is answered. And then the final part to the question, to follow up hundreds of folders, so manually selecting content wouldn't be feasible. So no, you don't need to do that. You can just point us at the folder above and archive everything below that folder. I think that would be the easiest way for you to work. There are other ways to do it. You can add filters and only archive folders or files that match filters and get deeper in like that. But I think either way, you'd find a way to do what you need to do. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and
thanks for the
I want to
question.
point out too that so all MagStor products come with LTFS software bundled with our libraries, standalone drives, etc. But Archiware has such a rich feature set and is so extensible. Just as Jason went into earlier, you can start with just the backup piece or the backup and the archive piece. P5 Synchronize adds a lot of power to it if you want to use a single pane of glass or Archiware to manage all these elements of your backup and data protection strategy. And then with the S3 integration, as we touched on a little bit too, it makes it even more powerful, but lots of features. So as David mentioned, hundreds of folders by yeah, I think we answered all those. So Emily Gray said, how long does it take to back up 50 terabytes of data? So our general rule of thumb at MagStor is we tell people hour per terabyte. Now, a library is automated on the cartridge change, so it's a little faster. The actual real numbers are a little faster. It's somewhat dependent on your shared storage that's pushing the data that the tape is, that Archiware is reading. But the typical tape drive today, half height LTO, is 300 megabytes per second transfer rate. And most shared storage systems with spinning disks are around that speed as well. I'm generalizing. My tech support guy will probably come comment with me on this, but at those rates, if we can read data, Archiware can read data at 300 megabytes per second, we're going to ingest about a terabyte per hour. Now, there's ways to do more and to do faster. You can add a second tape drive, and that second tape drive, you can do multiple jobs to different tape drives at the same time. With Archiware, you could also use it to clone, so you can make 2 copies of data at the same time. Take one set of tapes to one place and another to another place, or keep them on site. Yep. So there's lots of options, but again, figure about a terabyte per hour on that one.
Pete, I just thought while we're taking questions, do you want to take the slide screen share off, and then we'll have our...
Oh, yes, thank you.
People can see our beautiful faces while we're talking.
Yeah, so let me unshare. So Bob Thomas asked, Dhaval, this is for you. The new QXP-3X4 PES expander card, does that support LT? You want to talk about that?
Sure. The QXP-3X4 PES is actually for our new PES expander. There are more SATA expanders, so they would not be able to support SAS LTO drives. We still are continuing to use the QXP, the 820 SAS expansion card. So if you want to use LTO drives, you want to use the QXP 820. And you want to use with expansions. Most of our QNAP comes with dual PCIe expansion slots, so you can use both cards at the same time. Have one connected to LTO, the other one connected to our PES expansion cards. We are hoping the next, I think early next year, we'll have our new SAS expansion cards as well. So, but in the meantime, the 820 would be continued.
Okay, great. And why don't you take this next one, Dhaval, from Bob? Will we be seeing QNAP solutions with greater densities of NVMe?
Sure. A great question. So right now, we just released our biggest expansion unit, which is a 24-bay expansion units. But as of today, we are looking into something like something bigger, like a 48 drive. We are compatible with the Seagate 5U84 that we do support that as well. So if you want to have something bigger than the 24 that we offer, you can just connect or get the Seagate one and connect to our NAS, and we're fully compatible. You can create a storage pool on its own expansion, and you can purchase 2 of them. On most of our units, we'll support 2 of them, and you can actually span across both units, so you can get multi-petabyte level storage capacity. But right now, to be honest, we don't have anything coming up in the pipeline, but we are looking into something like that. And I'll put in your requests as well, just to push them as well.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Bob. And Ulysses Ruiz, I just sent you an email just now. So thanks for your interest, and I look forward to talking to you. And I can connect you or anybody who wants to inquire with anyone on the panel here today for follow-up. So Ulysses, I'm going to lower your raised hand, but thanks for the inquiry. So we answered that one. Chris, thanks for the question. Chris, what would the typical restore time be for, let's say, 100 terabytes of storage from a multi-tape library on a 25 gig network? So I'll start that one. Chris, pretty much the inverse would apply if your shared storage we're restoring to can handle a transfer rate of 300 megabytes per second or greater. Now, if it's a single tape drive, direct attached, or an ePro 10G on your network, the same kind of math would apply. It could be up to 100 hours. If it's multiple drives, I think you said 100 terabytes from a multi-tape library. Okay, not multiple tape drives. So unless anyone has any other experience, David, I'd say probably on the same order, 90 to 100 hours roughly.
Yeah, I mean, it might make a difference whether we're talking about backup or archive. What makes a difference is if you're restoring everything that was written from the tape, and we're just reading the tape in the same way that it was written. If you've made a selection where you're not restoring everything, then we're reading a bit, winding to the right point, and then reading a bit and winding. So that means that we're now doing something differently to the way that the tape was written. So that means that it could slow down. Yeah, so there's that. Files will be spanned over tapes. Large files will be beginning on one tape and ending on the next. So that shouldn't make any difference to the time it takes to restore. So yeah, I think typically the best case is the same time it took to write, but if it's more complex in the way that the data was written, then maybe things will be a little bit different.
Thanks, David.
And shall I take this one? Is this one?
Yeah,
for
sure.
me? If I get question from Emily, second question, if I get a 12 terabyte LTO tape, so that would be LTO 8. And I have 50 terabytes to back up, will Archiware / MagStor span the tapes as a single backup? So yeah, we will. So you've got 50 tapes, it's going to fit on 50 terabytes going to fit on 4 or 5 tapes. So you start the backup, we fill up the first tape, second, third, fourth, and then a bit of the fifth, and then we're done. So yeah, you don't need to think about tapes, you just need to keep feeding them in until you're done. If you've got a library, you don't really need to think about tapes at all. You just think about what you want to back up, what you want to restore, and Archiware will handle the tape side of it.
Yeah. Hey, David, I was wondering if they are barcode labeled tapes used in our desktop drive, do some users add a scanner to help ease or is it just as simple to use the tools in your software you mentioned earlier where you can help them create labels?
Yeah, it's easy. If you're using a standalone drive, it's easier to write something human readable on the spine of the tape, and then put that inside a P5, and then P5 will say we need backup tape A, or whatever you called it, and you can find that more easily. You can use barcodes if you want, but the barcode readers, in my experience, are always inside the tape libraries, so you don't really get external ones. Yeah.
Thank you. Thomas asked a question we should give to Dhaval, I think.
Yeah, so definitely you can use the HBS backup software, which is a hybrid backup sync software that you can do. You can schedule backups offsite to another location, and from there you can use Archiware P5 software to be able to do a backup to the tape attached to that NAS as well. So yeah, we do support, we fully support that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, and Bob, maybe you want to comment on that a bit more. We did touch on it earlier, where a customer might choose to use a second QNAP NAS are using hybrid backup sync, right? Which has application features and stuff built into it to take that first copy over to another QNAP NAS, right?
Yes. So what you would do is if you had two QNAP NASs and they were both on site, you would put them both on the same 10 gig network or the same 25 gig network, and you would use hybrid backup sync to go from system number 1 to system number 2. And again, over a 10 gig network, you could just generally say you would average about 1 hour per terabyte. So if you were backing up 50 terabytes, you're talking about 50 hours. It's actually a little bit faster than that, but it's a good rule of thumb, because depending on the material, whether you got huge video block files or individual small photos and small audio files, it averages about an hour per terabyte. But now you say, well, wait a minute, I don't want that second QNAP NAS to wind up being on site, because what if we have a fire? What if we have a flood? What if we have theft? I want to keep that off site. So what we wind up doing is we still use hybrid backup sync, but we wind up using software programs that are safe, that don't require ports to be opened up on the internet router. One of them is 0-tier, the other one is Tailscale, and they're both supported on QNAP. And then I can go from location A, QNAP 1 at location A, to QNAP 2 at location B. You are now at the complete mercy of your internet speeds. And the internet speeds in North America are very, very slow. So people that get used to doing, 4 terabytes in 4 hours, they say, well, that's great. I started the backup job and I go home and that's it. When you're dealing with doing 4 terabytes over the internet, it's going to take forever. It's a very, very slow process. You not only, people say, oh no, I've got a gig connection. Well, a gig is not a 10 gig connection, but when typical cable companies tell you that you're going to have a gig connection, they mean your download speed. They don't mean your upload speed. So a 900 megabit per second download speed typically will mean a 40 megabit per second upload speed. So you've got to be able to get from QNAP 1 over to QNAP 2, and all of a sudden you're crawling because your upload speeds are so terrible. See what I'm saying? Well, this is ridiculous. How do I wind up backing up all this data and get this stuff off site so that it's safe? LTO is really the only answer at this point, because it's just too slow. I tell people that if you want to be able to do a nightly backup, that's great. If you're adding 100 or 200 gigs of data, then that winds up working. When you come back from a field shoot in the video industry and you've just transferred 4 terabytes of data, how do you get that stuff backed up and off site immediately? LTO is your only answer at this point.
You need this guy. He can get the data off site quicker than your internet connection.
Exactly.
He's the man.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Bob, thank you so much for that answer. And I want to add in too, since we're a little bit over time, if you have any questions, shoot an email to pete@magstor.com. I'm happy to get you in touch with any of the panelists here, and we can help you configure a QNAP or Archiware or MagStor solution, all the above, that works best for you. We can also help with all your implementation services as needed. Bob's company, Rescue One, that's what he does. So if you want to spend some quality time with any of us, particularly Bob, buy a QNAP bundle. We'll help you get a good price on the QNAP bundle from QNAP and from MagStor, and MagStor can provide the Archiware. And we have Archiware implementation services too. So for some of the larger implementations that use multiple modules from Archiware, that can take a little bit of experience in the setup, and we're here to help you with that. So again, email pete@magstor.com with any questions. And in closing, I want to thank our panelists. You've been fantastic. I hope the attendees all found the content compelling and interesting and well worth their time today. But great panel. Thanks, gentlemen, for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.